It's Fat Albert. Well, actually, my real name is Kenan Thompson, but I play Fat Albert in the live-action film based on Bill Cosby's hit show. My buddies and I love adventure, but we also love a good challenge. That's why we love the NASA Sci Files. If you want an adventure in math, science, and technology, check in on the Treehouse Detectives, hot on the trail with their latest case on this exciting episode of the NASA Sci Files.
Be sure to look for the answers to the following questions. Why is it important to classify animals? Which phylum of invertebrates is most common? What are the 5 classes of vertebrates? When you see this icon, the answer is near.
What an awesome ride. Riding across the water at top speeds, checking out nature, and the wildlife was amazing.
Right, amazing.
Come on, Catherine. That has to rank up there as one of the coolest.
You're right, it was cool, but
what?
I've been thinking. Remember when we were out on the boat and we stopped to examine some of the plant life under the water? Well, I turned around to see this bird fall from the sky. I followed it down only to see another bird flailing around in the water, obviously hurt. I mentioned it to our guide, and he said that on a preserve, they don't usually rescue or help animals under stress from natural causes. There are no traps or anything there, so the bird probably had been attacked by a predator, but had gotten away. They don't interfere. I don't know. It just seems like there's something that we can do to help.
Well, we are talking about nature. I'm not sure we can help every animal.
True, but I wonder what we can do.
Kaylee might be able to help. She's the expert on nature and animals.
She probably doesn't have time. I think she's working on some kind of project.
I have an idea, but it's going to require everyone's help and Jacob's backyard.
Jacob might be hard to convince.
I don't know. Beneath his harsh exterior lies a truly compassionate nature lover.
Really?
Okay, so I'm exaggerating, but I'm sure I'll help. Let's contact the others.
I don't know how you expect me to help you with the wildlife badge research with all this prime real estate just waiting to be developed.
Tony, if we build houses everywhere there are forests, there won't be any wildlife.
Of course, you're right. By the way, how's the research coming along?
I've taken some pictures of our state bird, and I've identified some poisonous plants, but I still have a lot of work to do.
Well, I hope you have some extra time on your hands.
What's up?
I just got an email from Catherine. She said she saw an injured animal in the Everglades, and she and Bianca want to create their own backyard habitat.
Sounds cool. Whose backyard?
They've talked to Jacob, and he's agreed to use his backyard. I think he's hoping he doesn't have to cut the grass anymore.
At least he's doing what he can to help.
Good point. But the question is, what can we do? They're short in Florida and don't know where to begin.
I'm not sure, but maybe my research for my wildlife badge can help them.
Great idea. Let's start with the problem board.
Okay, what do we know?
We know that Catherine saw an injured animal in distress.
And of course we know that animals are a part of the animal kingdom.
And we also know that there are many different types of animals. So what do we need to know?
I think we need to start with the basics. If we're going to make a habitat for animals, we should learn how to classify and identify them.
And which ones we need to protect.
So where should we go?
Didn't you go on a camping trip to Busch Gardens with your Girl Scout troop?
Right. They take care of some amazing animals there. I'm sure they'll help us. I'll email my troop leader.
Excellent idea. And don't forget, we have to email Dr. D, Bianca and Catherine, and download a Get Up and Go sheet. You can get your own Get Up and Go sheet at the NASA Sci Files website.
It may take a lot of hard work, but it's good to help.
I'm here at Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, to talk with their zoological manager, Mr. Rob Yorty. He actually works with wolves here at the park, so it should be very exciting.
The wolves are very fascinating creatures, but remember, no cameras, backpacks, and also don't look them in the eye so we won't distract them.
No problem. They look like dogs.
Well, that's because they're in the same phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora, and family Canidae as dogs are.
Could you repeat that?
Well, actually, in your email, you requested information on how to classify animals, and that is the classification for wolves. But maybe we should start at the beginning.
That sounds like a good idea. We know that there are two main kingdoms, plants and animals, but we need to learn more about how animals are classified.
Just like for plants, scientists use a classification system for animals. The animal kingdom is divided into smaller groups. The largest group within a kingdom is a phylum. Phyla are divided into classes. Classes are divided into smaller and smaller groups. The smallest group is the species.
Why is it important to classify animals?
By classifying animals, we can give each organism a unique, scientifically accepted name, which avoids confusion.
Why can't you just call a dog a dog?
Well, an animal's common name can vary within languages, also within regions, even in the same country. Here in the U.S., the mountain lion is also called the panther, the cougar, or the puma. It's known as the cat of many names.
So how do animals get their names?
Well, scientists look at specific characteristics of each organism to divide them into groups. The animal kingdom is divided into two specific groups, vertebrates and invertebrates.
How are they different?
Vertebrates are animals with a backbone or spinal column. Invertebrates are not.
I have a backbone. I must be a vertebrate.
Yes, you are. About 5% of animals are vertebrates and are categorized into classes according to their traits. Vertebrates include fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals.
Wow, only 5%? Does that mean the other 95% are invertebrates?
That's correct. The invertebrate phyla consists of many different species of worms, insects, sponges, and even microscopic organisms.
If I were to find an animal in my backyard that I didn't recognize, how could I identify it?
Well, one way that scientists use to identify an animal is through the use of a dichotomous key.
Dichotomous key? I'm not sure I understand.
Dichotomous means separated into two parts. Dichotomous key is a method used to identify an object by giving a specific set of choices all the way down to the object's name, or in this case, an animal.
How does it work?
You start out with two characteristics. After choosing the first characteristic, you are given two more to choose from. You keep making choices until you classify the animal.
If you're looking at an animal, the first set of characteristics would be backbone or no backbone. And if it has a backbone, then you would keep looking at other characteristics to narrow it down.
Exactly. Like the gray wolf, you would start out with backbone or no backbone. You would choose backbone. The next set of choices would be fur or feathers. You would choose fur. Go down to the next set would be long canine teeth or short canine teeth. You would choose long canine teeth and eventually get down to the gray wolf classification.
They're really beautiful.
The gray wolf used to be endangered in the United States due to overhunting and the loss of habitat, but through conservation efforts it is now considered threatened. It is the largest of the canid species and has the largest range of any land mammal with the exception of humans. They are pack hunters and usually feed on mammals larger than themselves, including caribou, elk, and deer. They also have a very distinctive howl.
You're lucky to have such cool animals here at the park.
We're thrilled, and Busch Gardens Williamsburg is committed to the conservation of all animals. We have lots of different animals in our park to help teach our guests about their habitats, behaviors, the animal status in the wild, and what needs to be done to help the environment.
Seeing an animal up close and personal really does make a difference.
Just wait till you see the show.
Hi, Kaylee. What a cool vessel.
Yes, it is. It's like the kind used to collect bioluminescent organisms.
You sure can learn a lot about organisms in this glowing exhibit.
Very funny, Dr. D. I was surprised to learn that organisms can give off light by mixing chemicals in their own body, just like mixing chemicals in this glow stick.
Right, and organisms that make themselves glow are called bioluminescent.
Did you know that 90% of mid-ocean organisms are bioluminescent? They use their light to blind their predators, attract prey, and find a mate.
Wow, you really know your stuff.
In the ocean, you'll find jellyfish, sea cucumbers, shrimp, squid, and octopus that glow. And on land, you'll find fireflies, glowworms, snails, and click beetles.
So far you've mentioned only invertebrate animals.
Right. We learned that the animal kingdom is divided into vertebrates and invertebrates. Mr. Yorty at Busch Gardens told us that most of the animals are invertebrates.
Very good. The animal kingdom has over 30 major groups or phyla. One of these includes all of the vertebrates, and there are 8 others that include a majority of the invertebrates. Do you know which of the invertebrates are the most common?
I'm pretty sure insects are the most common.
Insects, including fireflies, are part of the phylum known as Arthropoda. There are more than 1 million arthropod species, and most of them are insects.
Does Arthropoda also include crabs and spiders?
Yes, it does, along with bioluminescent shrimp.
Are snails arthropods?
No. Arthropods have a hardened exoskeleton, which you might confuse with a snail's shell. Arthropods also have jointed appendages like wings, legs, or antennas.
So snails must be grouped with other shelled animals like clams.
Very good. Clams, mussels, and snails, along with octopus and squid, are all part of mollusca. Mollusks are soft-bodied. In fact, mollusca comes from the Latin word for soft.
Jellyfish are soft. Are they also part of mollusca?
Unfortunately, classification is a little more complicated than just hard and soft. Jellyfish, along with corals, are part of Cnidaria. These animals have tentacles and stinging cells.
Cnidaria. That's strange to say.
How about Nematoda?
That sounds like it has to do with the frog.
Nematoda actually refers to roundworms, which have a tube-like body. Earthworms are also tube-like, but they belong to the phylum Annelida, which are segmented animals.
Worms sure have some complicated names.
Just wait, there's more. Platyhelminthes, which is Latin for flatworm, are the simplest animals that have organ systems.
And I thought sea cucumber was a strange name.
Oh, sea cucumbers are from the Echinodermata phylum, along with sand dollars and starfish. These spiny skin animals have suction cup feet. The next phylum is very simple.
Finally, a simple name.
No, the name is not simple, but the animals are. Sponges are part of the Porifera phylum. These primitive animals have no symmetry, tissues, or organs.
Wow, classifying animals is harder than I thought. I hope we fare better with our backyard habitat.
Have you heard from the others?
Bianca and Catherine are researching vertebrates. They made a contact at NASA Kennedy Space Center, so they should have some excellent data.
True. I'm going out of town, but if I can help, send me an email.
Catherine and I are meeting with Ms. Rebecca Smith, a wildlife ecologist at NASA Kennedy Space Center. Part of her job is to monitor and minimize the effects of the space program on the environment, habitats, and wildlife. Plus, she knows all about vertebrates. Maybe we'll get to see some, other than ourselves.
Reach around and touch the middle of your back. What do you feel?
I feel my backbone.
Exactly. All vertebrates have an endoskeleton, which is an internal skeleton with a backbone. They have small bones called vertebrae. They typically consist of a bony arch that encloses a hole for the spinal cord and have stubby projections that connect with adjacent bones.
Why do vertebrates, need an endoskeleton?
It supports and protects the internal organs of the body and also provides a place for muscles to attach. The vertebrae protect the nerve or spinal cord, and because it is in many pieces, it allows an animal to bend.
So if an animal has a backbone, you know it belongs to the phylum Vertebrata. But how can you determine which class it belongs to?
You have to look at other characteristics or attributes. A key difference among vertebrates is how they regulate body temperature.
What do you mean?
The frog and the snake are both cold-blooded animals called ectotherms. They don't have an internal ability to control their body temperature. They rely on heat from the environment to keep them at a temperature for life processes. So when it's cold, their body processes slow down, and when it's warm, they speed up.
What about warm-blooded animals?
They're called endotherms. Their bodies can regulate heat, so they maintain a constant body temperature even if the temperature changes around them. Shivering, panting, and sweating are some of the ways that endotherms can control their body temperature.
Which classes of vertebrates are warm-blooded and which are cold-blooded?
There are 5 classes of vertebrates. Fish, amphibians, and reptiles are cold-blooded. Birds and mammals are warm-blooded.
So once you know if they are warm-blooded or cold-blooded, what other characteristics can you use to determine an animal's class?
Each class is very different. For example, fish have fins, gills, and most have scales that cover and protect their body. They live in a variety of aquatic habitats from saltwater to freshwater.
So all fish aren't the same.
No, there are 3 types: jawless fish, cartilage fish, and bony fish.
Amphibians live in water. How are they different from fish?
Unlike fish, most amphibians only spend part of their lives in the water and the rest of their lives on land. There are 3 types of amphibians: frogs and toads, newts and salamanders, and caecilians.
Why do they spend time on land and in water?
Amphibians need the water to lay their eggs. The young are also aquatic for a time before they go through metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis is the process that occurs when an animal changes form as it develops into an adult.
That's correct. For example, a frog develops from an egg to a tadpole and then to an adult.
What about reptiles?
Snakes are reptiles. You want to see a corn snake?
Sure.
Come on. Some reptiles, such as water snakes and sea turtles, live most of their lives in the water. But reptiles are primarily crocodilians, turtles, lizards, and snakes that can live on land from birth to death without returning to the water to reproduce. This is a corn snake. Most snakes in the U.S. are not poisonous and are actually beneficial to us because they occupy an important ecological niche, such as keeping the rodent population under control.
She's cool. What about birds?
Birds are unique because they lay hard-shelled eggs, they have beaks, wings, and feathers, and lightweight hollow bones that make it easier to fly.
So that leaves us mammals.
That's correct. Mammals have hair, give live birth, and feed milk to their young. There are 3 different types of mammals: the egg-laying mammals, the pouched mammals or marsupials, and the placental mammals, which are the largest group.
Don't mammals live in a variety of different habitats?
Animals such as whales and dolphins live in the ocean, sloths live in the trees, bats fly around, and moles live underground.
Wow, I never knew animals were so diverse.
It must be fun to study animals every day.
And challenging. For example, whenever a new building needs to be built or a pipeline needs to be laid, we go to the area and survey the site to see what animals will be affected. Whenever possible, we move the animals out of harm's way, and we work closely with project managers to reduce or eliminate the impacts.
Thanks, Miss Smith.
Now we need to research what animals need.
Mr. Mario Moda, a colleague of mine, might be able to help you.
Great.
Protecting animals may be more difficult than we thought. I know Kaylee and the other treehouse detectives are working hard, but we still have a lot to do.
So what's up? What kinds of animals will Jacob find in his backyard? Will the treehouse detectives find a new species? Is a backyard nature preserve a good idea? Find out in the next exciting chapter of The Case of the Zany Animal Antics.
Be sure to look for the answers to the following questions. What are the basic needs of animals? What are the 3 basic reasons animals migrate? What is different between mitosis and meiosis? Why is it important for a species to have genetic diversity?
You're not going to believe it, but it's all right here. With proper planning and maintenance, you can create your own backyard preserve, or habitat.
That's amazing.
And if you follow their guidelines, you can actually have your backyard officially recognized.
How'd you find out about all this?
I have a friend who deals strictly with agricultural stocks. I gave him a few leads on some farm equipment companies, and he gave me the scoop on backyard habitats.
Cool.
So, is everybody helping out?
All the treehouse detectives are pitching in. Catherine and Bianca are down at NASA Kennedy in Florida, and RJ's at Adventure Camp at Busch Gardens in Tampa.
We certainly have a great team.
Well, we haven't officially heard from RJ yet, but Dr. D's going to talk to him down in Florida.
And of course, NASA is a big resource.
Yes, they are. In fact, Catherine and Bianca are supposed to talk to Mr. Mario Moda there today.
I hope they remember to download their Get Up and Go sheets. You can download your own Get Up and Go sheet at the NASA Sci Files website.
Miss Smith was right. Mr. Mario Moda agreed to meet with us about animals. He is a wildlife biologist working with sea turtles here at NASA Kennedy Space Center. We hope to learn more about basic needs of animals, and if we're lucky, we may find a sea turtle nest on the beach.
Well, an animal's basic needs are pretty simple. They need food, water, shelter, and another mate so they can reproduce.
That sounds simple enough.
But how do you know what kind of food animals need?
Depends on the species, but no matter what kind of animal it is, you gotta make sure you have a healthy food chain. Do you know about the food chain?
We've studied the food chain in school.
It's the process of energy being transferred from one organism to another.
That's right, all living things need food for energy. Producers such as plants, algae, and other organisms convert light energy into sugar molecules that the plant uses for food energy. A portion of this energy is passed on when animals, called consumers, eat the plants.
And then other consumers eat the consumers that ate the plants.
Very good, and then energy stored in the molecules of one organism is transferred to another organism.
Making a food chain.
Plants are at the bottom. Animals such as deer and rabbits are called herbivores, and they eat the plants. The herbivores are then eaten by a carnivore, such as a wolf or lion.
Aren't there some that eat both plants and animals?
Yes, they're called omnivores. In the final stage of the food chain, when an animal or plant dies, they're broken down by bacteria called decomposers. Decomposers turn the remains into materials that can be used by the plants.
Food chains seem simple at first, but they're really complex.
In a habitat, there are many feeding relationships. Some can be very complex, so scientists use a food web to better show these relationships.
A web like a spider's web?
Actually, a spider's web is a good analogy. It is intricately woven and connected just like a food web.
What if something happened to an animal's habitat?
The food web would be disrupted, and it could disrupt the balance of plant and animal populations.
What do you mean?
Let's say a fire destroyed a habitat and removed all the plants. Without plants, then the herbivores would not have food to eat. Without herbivores, then the carnivores would also starve.
The animals will have to move to a new habitat.
It's not always that easy. Some habitats are small or enclosed by human development, such as subdivisions, making it difficult for animals to migrate to a new habitat.
If they can't find a new habitat, won't they die?
They might, and it could even lead to the extinction of some species.
I never realized that everything is so connected.
Yes, it is, and as part of my job here at NASA, I study the sea turtles that live in the estuaries and lagoons to make sure that their habitats aren't disrupted.
Mr. Moda told us all about how sea turtles are endangered and threatened, and how the beaches at NASA Kennedy provide nesting sites for them. By monitoring their population health, age structure, growth reproduction, mortality, and the impact of human activity, NASA can help the species thrive. We didn't get to see any, but Mr. Moda said that to do that, we would have to go out to sea.
I never knew that working as a zookeeper required so much. Feeding, raking, cleaning, more feeding. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding. Of course, I'm looking forward to my break. Hopefully I can take care of a little research for the treehouse detectives when I meet Dr. D today on the Busch Gardens Serengeti plain habitat. Each zebra has a unique set of stripes, which creates an optical illusion that confuses a predator. Oh, and I also learned that in 12 months, the animals of the Serengeti plain in Africa will travel in a large circle of about 1,000 kilometers.
That's right. The migration includes hundreds of thousands of herbivores, including Thompson's gazelles, zebras, and wildebeest, like these here.
Wow, they're pretty funny-looking animals.
African legend says they're made for spare parts. Wildebeest are, however, well suited for their migration. For example, most wildebeest calves can stand and run in less than 10 minutes after birth.
Wow, that's amazing. But I thought migration meant going south for the winter. Does it get that cold in Africa?
No, but there are seasons, wet and dry. During the dry season, the grass dries out and water becomes scarce. The herbivores that migrate leave in search of new grass and plentiful water.
I know that other animals, like birds, will migrate great distances. Is this also in search of food?
There are three basic reasons for migration. The first is food and water. The second is to escape harsh weather.
So I guess that when birds fly south for the winter, they get both a milder climate and more food.
Very good. When they go north for the summer, they get more hours of daylight to gather food.
How do animals travel thousands of kilometers and find their destination? They must have some way to navigate.
Are you ready to try an experiment?
Okay, why not?
Close your eyes and I'll spin you around. Now, keep your eyes closed and point north.
Are you kidding, Dr. D? I can't point north with my eyes closed. I'm not even sure if I can point north with my eyes open without a compass.
Some animals can. They have a built-in compass in their head that helps them find their destination. Other animals use the sun or stars to find their way.
Couldn't animals just use landmarks such as mountains or lakes on their journeys?
Sometimes they do. Salmon migrate using a keen sense of smell.
Dr. D, can I ask just one more quick question?
Sure, RJ.
Can I open my eyes now?
Of course. You'll need to see to feed the giraffes.
Dr. D, didn't you say there are 3 reasons for migration?
Good memory, RJ. The third reason for animal migration is reproduction. They want to provide their young with plenty of food and with protection from predators and extremes in the environment.
I should have guessed reproduction. That's one of an animal's basic needs.
And migration is all about meeting basic needs.
Thanks, Dr. D. I'm working at the Nairobi Field Station later today. That'll be a great place to learn more about animal reproduction.
Right. But first, let's get some more hibiscus leaves for the giraffe.
I've been going over our notes so far, and I think Jacob's in for a big surprise.
And there's a lot to consider when it comes to creating your own preserve.
Right, like whether your property is rural, suburban, or urban, and what types of wildlife the habitat will support.
And of course, you have to support the basic needs of the animals in your habitat. Otherwise, they might migrate to another area. Good thing we have RJ's notes on migration.
And Dr. D talked about animal growth through reproduction,
which is critical to the population. Hopefully RJ will learn more at the Nairobi Field Station at Busch Gardens in Tampa. He's working with Miss Diedring as we speak.
We should visit Jacob's backyard to see what types of animals already live there.
Good idea. Otherwise, I'll have to hire some survey consultants as well.
What do you mean?
Well, if the habitat is successful, I have other problems to consider. Parking, ticket prices, a possible treehouse detective gift shop.
And I'm sure you'll be giving Jacob some of the proceeds.
Don't worry, he's salaried.
Dr. D mentioned that animal reproduction was important for the survival of species. We need to learn more about how animals reproduce.
Well, there are 2 main ways that animals reproduce, sexually and by asexual reproduction.
What's the difference?
Well, to understand the difference, first you need to know a little bit about cells.
I remember from science class that a cell is the smallest unit or basic building block of living things. And they have a nucleus that is surrounded by cytoplasm and a cell membrane.
That's correct, very good. The nucleus actually contains DNA. Now, DNA is the genetic code that determines the characteristics of animals, such as blonde hair or brown hair or blue eyes or green eyes, and so on as with humans.
So how do cells reproduce?
All cells reproduce from other cells.
Do all cells reproduce the same way?
No, there are actually 2 ways that cells reproduce. One way that cells, such as body cells, reproduce is through mitosis. In mitosis, the cell duplicates its genetic material and then splits in 2, forming 2 identical cells. Mitosis is the process by which animals are able to grow.
Okay, so if that's mitosis, what's the other way?
Meiosis. In this method, certain cells in the reproductive tissue divide so that they contain exactly half of the genetic material. The chromosomes that carry the genetic codes occur in pairs, and during meiosis, 1/2 of each pair goes to the new cells. In males, these are the sperm cells, and in females, they're the egg cells.
Okay, so what does cell division have to do with reproduction?
In asexual reproduction, an offspring is formed from one parent cell. The parent cell goes through mitosis and forms an offspring that is identical to the parent.
What types of animals reproduce asexually?
Flatworms and sponges are 2 of them. Starfish, also known as sea stars, reproduce by regeneration, which is a form of asexual reproduction.
Right. My dad said that if a starfish loses one of its rays, then it'll grow a new one, and the one that broke off will grow 4 more.
That's right. Long ago, some fishermen had a problem with starfish getting caught in their nets, so they tried to get rid of them by chopping them into pieces. But they were actually only adding to the problem because each new piece grew new limbs and created more starfish.
It sounds like they could have used the scientific method and done more research before they tried to solve the problem. So what is sexual reproduction?
Well, it occurs when a sperm and egg cell combine to produce a new cell, which is called a zygote, which will then grow into an offspring. Now, the offspring produced will receive a combination of genetic material from both the male and female parent.
Is one type of reproduction better than the other?
No, it just depends on the animal. However, with sexual reproduction, meiosis helps to sort of shuffle the genetic material to the offspring to help ensure genetic diversity.
Why is that important?
Well, genetic diversity is critical for a species' survival because it increases the probability that only healthy, strong individuals will be produced. Additionally, genetic diversity also helps reduce the probability that a genetic defect will overcome a population.
So would it be important to have a large population of a species for better genetic shuffling?
Yes, with a large population, there's much more genetic diversity.
Are there any factors that keep animals from reproducing?
Sure there are. Geographic isolation, genetic defects, and a lack of food, water, and shelter.
So for reproduction, it's pretty important to make sure that an animal's basic needs are met.
Yes, it is. Without adequate amounts of food, water, and shelter, animals will actually stop reproducing so that they can better enable those that are living to survive.
I can't wait to send my report to the treehouse detectives.
Maybe you can email them after we clean the porcupine habitat.
Well, the zookeeper's job is never done.
So what's up? Will the treehouse detectives find any endangered animals in Jacob's backyard? Will Kaylee get her Girl Scout badge? What else should the detectives do to help Jacob get a certified habitat? Find out in the next exciting chapter of The Case of the Zany Animal Antics.
Be sure to look for answers to the following questions. What is carrying capacity? Why is it important to randomly sample a population? What makes a good habitat? What does territorial mean?
Thanks for helping me on my bat project, Dr. D. Helping an endangered species is one of the requirements for my wilderness badge.
No problem. I'm glad that your project involves bats, because over 40% of bat species are endangered or threatened.
It's especially important because the eastern big-eared bat, which is native to southeastern Virginia, is endangered.
I read that as well.
Did you know that one bat can eat up to 3,000 insects in one night?
It also helps to disperse seeds and pollinate fruits.
So by providing the bats with shelter and a place to raise their young, the number of bats in the area should increase.
It will certainly help, but a lot of factors affect the growth of a population.
Isn't a population a group of the same species that's living in a particular area?
I see that you've been doing some research. Let's do an experiment with pennies that simulates population growth. If I throw down 8 pennies to represent 8 bats, how many will turn up heads?
On the average, 4 should turn up as heads.
That's right. Let's say that the bat population as a whole averages 1 baby or pup per bat couple per year.
That means that with 4 bat couples or 8 bats, they would produce a total of 4 pups per year, which means after 1 year you would have 12 bats.
Excellent. We can then add 4 pennies and throw down a total of 12 to see how many bats we'll have in the next year. Let's try the experiment 5 times to see how many bats we'll have in 5 years. We got 5 heads. Add 5 pennies to mine.
I get 45. The population increased rapidly.
I have 62. It's different because you don't always get the average when you throw down pennies.
Shouldn't we subtract a few pennies to represent the bats that died or left the area?
That's a good point. Under ideal conditions where bats only die of old age and no bats immigrate, the population will eventually reach what is called its biotic potential as it grows very rapidly.
I guess that means that the animals' needs are met and that they have a healthy habitat.
That's right. In the real world, the population will eventually reach an equilibrium situation, where the number of births equal the number of deaths.
I guess that's because the population gets so big, there's just not enough food to feed everyone.
That's one factor, but there are a lot of other factors. A lot of animals in a small area is called a high density. High densities of prey attract more predators.
And I would think that diseases would spread more easily through high-density populations. Plus, I guess that animals just need a certain amount of space.
That's right. All of these factors affect the maximum number of a species that a given environment can support. That's called the carrying capacity.
I just hope we can help increase the bat population.
I hope so, too. So how can you tell if the population is shrinking or growing?
We would have to count them, but I would think it would be almost impossible to count all of the animals.
Yes, it would be difficult. In order to estimate the population of a species, scientists will capture some of them, mark them with a tag, and then release them. Sometime later, they'll capture some more of the same species and see what fraction are tagged.
I bet there's some mathematical way to figure out the size of the total population.
There's some other techniques to measure populations. Right on the internet, the Carroll City Elementary School in Miami, Florida is investigating a random sampling technique.
Aren't they a NASA Explore School? To find out how you can get your school to become a NASA Explore School, visit the NASA Sci Files website.
Yes, and they're working with the Society of Women Engineers.
Here they are now.
Hi, I'm Taquin, and I'm from Miss Polanco's class.
And I'm Anita, and I'm in Miss Gant's class here at Carroll City Elementary School in Miami, Florida.
Hi, Dr. D told us about your investigation. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. With the help from our mentors from the Society of Women Engineers, we begin by looking at this critter page and trying to predict how many critters are on it.
It looks like it has a lot of critters.
Yes, it's a lot to count, so we brainstormed some ways to estimate the number.
We decided to use a random sampling technique.
Right. We used a sampling square and randomly dropped it on the page of critters.
Why did you drop it randomly?
Randomly dropping the square gives a better sample of the population. If you choose where to count the critters, you may pick areas with lots of them. Then your estimate will be too high.
Next, we outlined the square and then counted the number of critters in it.
What do you do if a square cuts a critter in half? How do you count it?
Good question. For our sample, we only used critters that were at least half in the square.
So how many samples did you take?
Remember, in a random sample, the more data you collect, the more accurate your estimate.
We dropped the square 4 more times.
Next, we found the average number of critters per square unit.
How did you find the total number of critters?
We counted the number of square units on the page, and there were 63. So we multiplied our average number by 63 and recorded it on our chart.
To give us an even more accurate estimate, we used each group's average and calculated the class average.
How do you know if your estimates are accurate? Don't you need to know the total number of critters on the page?
Yes, we each counted the critters and compared our answers. There were 393 critters on the page.
How did your estimates compare with the actual numbers?
Our group estimated 433, so we were off by 40.
However, when we compared the class estimate to the actual, it was 412, a lot closer.
That's why it's important to take lots of samples and gather plenty of data.
It is very difficult to count a large population of animals, but by sampling and finding an estimate, you can get pretty close to the number.
Next, we're going outside to do a sample of some real critters, like grasshoppers.
Sounds like fun. Maybe we should do that for Jacob's backyard. Be sure to post your results on the website so we can see what you found.
Will do, and let us know about the animal population in your preserve.
Goodbye from Carroll City Elementary School in Miami, Florida.
I'm not sure that Jacob will want to know the population of critters in his backyard.
Probably not, but at least you have an idea of how to find the size of a population.
I wonder how Jacob's doing. Maybe I should go see if he needs some help.
Well, this will take some time to dry.
Have you heard from Jacob? I wonder if he's working in his backyard.
No, but Kaylee's report on populations was very helpful. She's almost done all of her work to earn her badge. All she needs is to find out about an endangered species in our state.
I wonder if there's one in Jacob's backyard.
I think everything in Jacob's backyard is endangered.
I know, but if we could find a species that his backyard could support, maybe we could help Kaylee.
That would be awesome.
Let's go to the problem board.
Good idea. So what do we know?
We know that animals belong to the animal kingdom and are divided into 2 separate divisions.
Right, vertebrates and invertebrates.
We know that animals have basic needs and that they will migrate to find new food sources.
We also know that animals reproduce based on the amount of food available and the right conditions.
That's why populations will vary so much.
So what do we need to know?
We need to know what makes a good habitat.
We also need to learn more about how habitats can help endangered species.
So where do we go?
Mr. Moda mentioned that Dr. Brenninger studies and protects the wildlife at NASA Kennedy. I'll see if he can help.
Great. Since we're going to be creating a habitat that can support wildlife and possibly even an endangered species, we'll need to know what makes up a good one.
Exactly. Here's Dr. Brenninger now.
Hi, I read your email and I understand that Jacob wants to turn his backyard into a nature preserve.
Yes, but we need to learn more about habitats before he does.
What exactly is a habitat?
It's an area with specific habitat features that allows a specific species to survive. For example, this area has low trees and a sparse tree canopy and is called scrubby flatwoods.
So what makes a good habitat?
Lots of things. Habitat should provide enough food, shelter, and protection from predators. When all these things are present, animals can produce enough young for their population to survive.
Does a species ever produce too many young?
Yes, and that makes the habitat overcrowded. In fact, some animals will leave and find less crowded areas, while others will stay but will produce fewer young.
So the size and health of a habitat can determine the population of a species?
Exactly. Each individual or family of animals needs enough habitat to survive. Depending on the amount of food, water, and shelter in a habitat, only a certain number of individuals can be supported. If the habitat cannot provide for a large enough population, the species faces extinction.
What do you mean?
In a species, there are years when there are more deaths than births. There are also times when the habitat is disrupted by disease, fire, and storms.
But won't they just reproduce once the habitat is restored?
If the disruption causes the population to decrease, then the probability that enough individuals will survive to reproduce is less likely.
How much habitat does each species need?
That varies among species. Florida scrub jays need about 25 acres, and they're very territorial.
What is territorial?
Territorial means that they claim a specific area their own. If other scrub jays try to live in their area, they will defend it.
I never thought of birds defending their home.
Scrub jays live within the same territory with their mate for life. Their young also often stay with them for many years.
So how are habitats destroyed or disrupted?
Fires and storms regularly can change habitat but seldom destroy them. Humans, however, regularly destroy habitats to build houses and grow food. They also disrupt natural processes such as wildfires.
Why is fire so important?
Fires keep the shrubs low and add nutrients back into the soil.
How do you help NASA protect the environment?
I use field studies, remote sensing, and computer models to study animal populations and their habitat. I then advise NASA on how to take care of the environment.
NASA sure is concerned about the environment.
That's right, and we want to make sure that endangered animals such as scrub jays are around for a long time.
Thanks, Mr. Brenninger. This has been helpful.
You're welcome, and good luck on your nature preserve.
Wow, I never realized how difficult it was to protect habitats and endangered species.
That's why it's such a great idea to create a backyard habitat. Just think of what you can do to help animals.
Do you really think we can actually help an endangered species?
Well, we can try. In fact, now that we've done the research, we may be ready to start learning about protecting animals in the backyard habitat.
Great, I hope we can help.
So what's up? Will the treehouse detectives find any endangered animals in Jacob's backyard? Will Kaylee get her Girl Scout badge? What else should the detectives do to help Jacob get a certified habitat? Find out in the exciting conclusion of The Case of the Zany Animal Antics.
Be sure to look for answers to the following questions. What criteria are used to classify an animal as endangered? What is exploitation? What are the 3 levels of endangerment? How many breeding pairs of bald eagles are currently in the U.S.?
That's awesome.
I know. I never thought it could happen, but I may have actually discovered a species that we could help.
Are you sure it's an endangered species and that we can help?
I think it's endangered. I'm not sure exactly. Did you get any information from NASA about how to determine if a species is endangered?
No, but I did get a lead. Dr. Brenninger works with lots of NASA researchers who work with endangered species. I'll try to contact him.
Good idea. You know, it's strange, but I never thought I could actually help out an animal Possibly even an endangered one in my own backyard. It's kind of cool.
Yes, but you're getting ahead of yourself. First, we need some more answers. Here's Mr. Scheidt. He works with endangered species at NASA Kennedy. Hi, Mr. Scheidt.
Hello. I understand you want to learn about endangered animals.
Yes, but we're not even sure how we know a species is endangered.
The Endangered Species Act says that any species that is in danger of becoming extinct throughout all or a significant portion of its range can be classified as endangered.
What kind of things cause animals to become endangered?
Loss of habitat is one way.
We learned that an animal's habitat is very important to providing its basic needs.
That's right. If an animal's habitat is greatly altered, reduced, or destroyed, it can have a significant impact on the species.
We also learned that in addition to fire and storms, people have a big effect on an animal's habitat.
Yes, human impacts can have serious effects on habitat. For example, water and/or air pollution can restrict plant growth or harm a habitat. Exploitation is another way it can endanger a species.
What do you mean by exploitation?
Exploitation is where a species population is reduced to a point that it cannot reproduce fast enough to sustain itself.
How are animals exploited?
Take the manatee, for example. In the 18th and 19th centuries, they were hunted extensively for their meat, fat, and tough hides, which greatly reduced their population. Currently, residential and commercial development along the coast has also degraded their habitat, thus decreasing their population.
Sort of like what happened to the buffalo in the plains. They were hunted until there were hardly any left. But I think they're making a comeback. Are there levels of endangerment?
Yes, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has 3 levels. Endangered is the most severe. Threatened is when a species is likely to become endangered within the foreseeable future throughout all or most of its range. And last are species of special concern.
What's that?
It's when a species may need a conservation action. This usually means periodic monitoring of the species population or its habitat.
Do most become threatened or endangered?
No, not always. Sometimes, if we become aware of the problem early enough, we can remedy it before the species gets to that point.
How many animals are on the endangered species list?
There are over 900 species of plants and animals on the list.
How many are there in NASA Kennedy?
Kennedy Space Center is actually home to 10 endangered species. Of course, these species aren't endangered due to the Space Center, but are actually protected by Kennedy Space Center since it is so large and covers so many different types of habitats. Did you know that only 6% of the Space Center is used for space launch operations?
And the rest is Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge.
That's right. We not only have programs to protect these species, but we also conduct research to aid in their recovery.
Do you ever have to rescue animals?
Yes. Sometimes when we encounter an injured or distressed animal, we do our best to stabilize the animal until a rescue team arrives.
Who helps you rescue the animals?
We work closely with state and federal agencies, along with private organizations such as SeaWorld. You may want to go to SeaWorld and talk to Dr. Beth Chittick, a veterinarian that works with the SeaWorld Rescue Program.
Thanks, Mr. Scheidt. This has been fascinating information.
You're welcome.
SeaWorld Rescue Program. Sounds awesome.
Yes, it does. And it sounds like it's right up RJ's alley, since he's still down in Florida.
You send him an email while I go check on our endangered species.
I hope you know what you're doing, Jacob.
Remember, this is me we're talking about.
I'm here in Florida with Dr. Beth Chittick, a veterinarian who works at SeaWorld. She has a real inside scoop on why SeaWorld rescues and rehabilitates animals.
SeaWorld is committed to wildlife conservation. Our rescue programs allow us to help animals and also learn more about them at the same time.
What kind of animals do you rescue?
The 4 main animal groups we rescue are sea turtles, aquatic birds, manatees, and dolphins.
What about an animal injured by natural causes?
We rescue those animals that are sick or injured or who need medical attention in order to survive, regardless of the cause. For example, sometimes manatees become cold stressed in the winter, which is natural, but we would still attempt to rescue them, especially since they are endangered.
So if a manatee or dolphin is sick enough to be rescued, what do you do?
We mobilize our crew and equipment and head to the site where the animal is located. We approach it slowly and encircle it with a net. We then pull that net into the boat and transport the animal to our rescue vehicle.
Do you treat an animal right away, or do you wait until you get back to SeaWorld?
If the injury is minor, the animal can be treated and released. If the animal is more seriously sick or injured, it receives a full exam during transport, and if any initial treatment is needed, we give it right away.
What happens to the animal once it arrives here?
We're a lot like a hospital. Once an animal arrives, we do tests such as take blood samples and x-rays to help us determine what's wrong with the animal. Once we know what the problem is, then we can devise a plan to treat it.
So when the animal gets well, it gets to go home.
Yes. Once it is rehabilitated and ready for release, SeaWorld works with the appropriate government agency to determine when and where to release the animal, usually as close as possible to where we rescued it.
What about the animals that can't be rehabilitated?
It is our goal to release all rescued animals if possible. However, if an animal's injuries keep them from being able to survive on their own in the wild, we would either keep them here or find them another home.
I know you can't save every manatee that's sick or injured, but you do save a lot of them, right?
Yes, we have rescued 324 manatees and released 121 back into the wild.
Mr. Scheid at NASA Kennedy says that sometimes NASA works with SeaWorld to rescue animals. Do you work with any other organizations?
Yes, and you should meet Miss Jenny Bush. She is president of our SeaWorld Busch Gardens Conservation Fund and can answer that question for you. I think she's working with one of the eagles today in the park.
Hi, Miss Bush.
Hi, RJ. This is Maddie. She's from the Audubon Bird of Prey Center. She fell out of her tree when she was 5 weeks old.
Is she okay now?
Maddie is okay now, but after 8 months of rehabilitation, she was deemed non-releasable, so she trains here at SeaWorld to become an animal ambassador.
Aren't bald eagles endangered?
Bald eagles are a great success story. Just 50 years ago, they were very endangered, but now through conservation efforts and awareness, there are over 7,000 pairs, and they're protected.
Wow, that's a lot of eagle families.
It's a great story to tell, and we hope in the future that we can help many more animals just like the bald eagle.
How will you do that?
Through the efforts of the SeaWorld and Busch Gardens Conservation Fund.
What exactly is a conservation fund?
Well, the fund is a nonprofit organization that helps to grant monies to other organizations like World Wildlife Fund, National Wildlife Federation, to go towards projects like conservation education, habitat protection, species research, both marine and terrestrial, and rescue and rehabilitation.
What kind of research do you do?
Well, the SeaWorld Busch Gardens Conservation Fund grants monies to many different projects in the field, from protecting black rhinos in Africa to protecting coral reefs in South America. Our 5 zoological parks participate in research as well, from creating a better flotation device for ill manatees to also learning how killer whales communicate.
I learned a thing or two about taking care of animals this week at Adventure Camp.
Well, I imagine it hasn't been as easy as you thought it would be.
That's for sure. It's definitely a career I'm interested in learning more about.
Yes, working with animals is very rewarding. You should try the Marine Mammal Keeper experience here at SeaWorld.
That's great. Sure sounds like you're committed to helping the animals and the environment.
Yes, SeaWorld and Busch Gardens have been environmental stewards for over 40 years.
Thanks, Ms. Bush. This has been great.
You're welcome, RJ. Enjoy the rest of your time at camp.
All right, thank
you. Bianca, did you get RJ's report?
Yes, it has all kinds of information on how injured and endangered animals are taken care of. He's getting really good work done.
Yes, it is all coming together.
What's coming together?
Well, you know how Catherine wanted to protect animals.
Yes.
And Kaylee needed to protect an endangered species to get her wildlife badge. And it was your idea to turn my backyard into a habitat.
Thank you. Yes?
Well, it all just might work. I've got to go to my house and get Tony and Catherine, and then we're going to Mr. Cutchin's to meet Kaylee.
Who is Mr. Cutchin?
He has an official backyard habitat. Dr. D is going to meet us there to give us an idea of what goes into an actual habitat.
That's great, but how does all that relate to endangered species?
Kaylee built a bat house for eastern big-eared bats, but she has no place to put it. Well, they are endangered, and it turns out my backyard is in their range.
Jacob, that's great. You've helped Catherine and Kaylee.
Yes, but I have one obstacle left. Can you check my email?
Are you expecting official notification for your yard?
Sort of.
All you have is a letter from your mom.
What's it say?
One word. Okay.
Yes! I've got to go.
I'll never understand him.
Wow, Mr. Cutchin has a great backyard habitat. Look, he even has a cool plaque indicating he's certified by the National Wildlife Federation.
You have to provide food, water, shelter, and a place for animals to raise their young if you want to be certified.
That makes sense. That's the list of animals' basic needs.
The habitat also has to be managed to conserve soil and water. We have a lot of work to do to get your backyard up to this level, but it'll be worth it.
Did you get your wildlife badge?
Well, I've done all my research, and I finished my bat house.
but I haven't found a suitable habitat for it.
Is that your bat house over there?
Yeah, I brought it today so you could see it.
Cool. But it's hard to believe bats could fit in there.
Actually, that can hold up to 50 bats.
Hi guys, we're Tony and Catherine. Aren't they supposed to meet us here?
They're in my house, working on an observation area and fee structure for our habitat.
Catherine should keep him under control.
I'm sure she will. Okay, you've learned a lot about vertebrates and invertebrates. Look around and tell me which animals you think this backyard habitat will support.
That's easy. We know there are 5 types of vertebrates, and I bet we can find one of each in this backyard.
Right. I bet there are lots of birds. Mr. Cutchin told us these flowers attract hummingbirds.
And that bird feeder and bird bath should help attract migrating birds.
And those nesting boxes provide a place to raise young birds.
That looks like a squirrel house. And these logs and bushes would provide good shelter for rabbits. Those are both mammals.
Frogs are amphibians. I'm sure we'll find them here.
And don't forget reptiles. We might see a snake, lizard, or turtle.
There aren't any fish, but that might happen in a later addition to the habitat.
Don't forget the invertebrates. I'm sure the Annelida phylum will help the garden.
Oh, you mean earthworms.
And I know we'll see lots of insects, which are arthropoda, like beetles, ladybugs, flies, and mosquitoes.
You've learned your lessons well. So why are backyard habitats so important?
Loss of habitat is the #1 threat to wildlife.
And increasing the habitat increases the populations of animals. You know, the carrying capacity will go up.
And they are beautiful. I mean, they are great for thoughtful reflection.
Creating backyard habitats helps restore the balance of nature.
As you can see here, you don't need a big space to make a difference.
This is an excellent example of a habitat, but it does seem to be missing something.
Like what?
I don't see any special accommodations for an endangered species.
Well, neither does our habitat.
That, young Kaylee, is where you are wrong. In fact, you are the exact reason why my backyard habitat is going to be a success.
What are you talking about?
I had a serious discussion with my mom, and after a little extra yard work, I was able to convince her to let me put your bat house in my backyard.
Do you have bats in your backyard?
Not yet, but research indicates that over 50% of all bat houses are occupied, and I'm feeling lucky. I also spoke with your scout leader. Let me be the first to congratulate you on earning your wildlife badge.
What do you mean?
Well, I knew you had built the bat house, but you hadn't found a good place to put it yet. It turns out that my house is in the area where eastern big-eared bats live. So by placing your bat house there, you are providing top-notch accommodations for an endangered species.
Jacob, you're the best.
Yes, like I've always said, underneath this harsh exterior lies a peaceful, nature-loving.
Good work, kids. I look forward to seeing your habitat.
There's only one small problem.
What is it?
How can we help?
Well, I'm actually terrified of bats. Maybe I can move into the treehouse permanently.
Jacob, I don't think the treehouse is ready to support your species long term.